President Trump warns the war with Iran could go on for weeks. The regime is attacking Israel and U.S. military targets in the region, as well as some Arab states. Yesterday, 3 U.S. soldiers died in an attack in Kuwait.
Israel and United States forces continue to pound military targets inside Iran. The president is urging the Iranian people to rise up and take back their country after Saturday's strike took out the supreme leader. CBN Middle East correspondent Paul Petit reports.
Iranians celebrated in the streets of Tehran and around the world after joint U.S.-Israeli military strikes killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei.
This has been the wish of the Iranian. We couldn't wait to hear this news. And now that has happened, and people are rejoicing.
Also dead, more than 40 top Iranian officials, including the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and the Iranian defense minister.
I would say that the military results are above and beyond. I think a very high level of success.
Regime change was part of the strategy in Saturday's joint surprise attacks on Iran. The IDF reports it dropped more than 2,000 bombs in 30 hours, striking hundreds of targets and achieving air superiority on day one. Israel is also striking Lebanon after Hezbollah fired rockets near Haifa. And in a Truth Social recorded video, President Trump says 9 Iranian naval ships were destroyed.
Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved.
I think we're living in historic times, and this will go down in history as a brilliant move of 2 democracies fighting back.
Iran retaliated by targeting U.S. military installations in 6 Arab countries, rousing more hostility towards the government and triggering Germany, France, and the U.K. to possibly join in the fight. Central Command reports 3 U.S. service members were killed in action in Kuwait, and 3 U.S. jets crashed in a friendly fire incident. All 6 pilots survived after parachuting from their fighters. Israel is also taking hits. An Iranian missile strike early Sunday morning in the heart of Tel Aviv, killing 1 person and injuring nearly a dozen others. So far, 1 woman has died and nearly 24 injured when that ballistic missile hit this apartment building in Tel Aviv. The Ministry for Foreign Affairs spokesperson saying this is a perfect example of how, while U.S. and Israel is fighting against Iran's militia, Iran is targeting civilians.
This is the result of the Iranian regime ballistic terror. As you can see, the ballistic missiles was aimed at a civilian neighborhood. This is a civilian building.
Sunday afternoon, another deadly Iranian missile strike in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood outside Jerusalem, destroying a synagogue and surrounding homes. So far, 9 people are dead, more than a dozen hospitalized, as rescue crews dig through the rubble for those still missing. Iran is firing missiles at Israel daily. Iranian state media announcing Sunday that an interim leadership council will take over until another supreme leader is selected.
I call upon all Iranian patriots who yearn for freedom to seize this moment, to be brave, be bold, be heroic, and take back your country.
President Trump says the war could last up to 5 weeks and agreed to talks with Iran leadership, adding they should have done it sooner.
We are witnessing this part of history, and this will be a liberation of the Christian church, the underground church, so that hopefully in future we won't call it underground church anymore, and people can practice their faith and they can spread the gospel, again, not only in Iran, but in the whole region, in the whole Middle East.
Paul Petit, CBN News, Tel Aviv.
Well, CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins us now. So, Chris, Israel has taken some hits from Iranian missiles. What's it like for Israeli? What's it like right now in Jerusalem?
Well, there's regular sirens here, Gordon, and people running to the bomb shelters. Just probably about 2 hours ago, we saw interceptions over the Bureau here. And as Paul said, there were strikes in Tel Aviv, Bet Shemesh. Last year in Jerusalem, it was the loudest I ever heard. We actually felt the vibrations. Yet Israelis are remarkably resilient, Gordon. Julie Stahl, our correspondent, went to the Shuk, the open-air market, just this afternoon. And what did they tell her? They said they're praying, and they want Israel to finish the job. And they're also supporting the Iranian people. They want them free. So I would say the people here, Gordon, are affected, but they're steadfast. People are holding up. They really have no choice. But I would say remarkable resilience here in the threat of all these Iranian attacks.
For Israelis, what does finishing the job mean? Is that regime change? Is that a new constitutional monarchy? I don't see how you can go forward under the theocracy. Right now, I'm hearing reports from inside Iran that the clerics are going to choose the next leader. So what does finishing the job mean?
I would think finishing the job would mean the end of the Islamic regime, would be an installment of a constitutional monarchy or some sort of democracy, and the end of what has been for Israelis, an existential threat that this regime committed to the destruction of the state of Israel. There's a story about how the prime minister of Spain one time met the Ayatollah, and he said, "What do you think? What's the first thing you think about in the morning?" And he said, "To eliminate Israel." So I think for the Israeli people, they want an end to Iran's, this Islamic regime, the institution of a constitutional monarchy or whatever kind of, but a friend in Iran and no longer a mortal enemy.
Well, we've been saying for some time now it's the leadership of Iran that's the weapon. It's more than just trying to refine uranium or acquire a nuclear weapon. It's the regime itself. They're behind Hezbollah, they're behind Hamas, they're behind the Houthis. They say death to Israel, they say death to the United States. The Houthis have that on their flag. It's been a asymmetrical war for decades where they get to do whatever they want in terms of terror attacks. And then anytime you retaliate and say enough, then somehow you're the oppressor. It really doesn't make any sense with me. So let's look at the decimation of the leadership in Iran. You had this lightning strike that took out the Ayatollah, took out the military leadership. Who's calling the shots now?
Well, that's a good question, Gordon. And anybody that's calling the shot right now may be on a limited time frame. It's really had a huge impact. Like you said, the Ayatollah and 40 of the top leaders of the military, the IRGC, the Defense Department, the Baji's have been eliminated. And they have had, you have to believe that Israel has had incredible real-time intelligence to be able to do that. But what it's done is right now you have lower-level Iranian leadership and what they are doing right now. Perhaps these are pre-planned attacks that we're seeing against many of the nations here, including Israel. Certainly, this is leading to a lack of communication. It decimated the command structure. You would imagine this slow decision-making and degrading their coordination. So this has had a huge impact. And that was the plan by Israel and the U.S. to make sure they took out the leadership as soon as they could, the very first hours of the war.
Are these indiscriminate attacks? It looks like they're using their drones, which are remarkably cheap to make, but it just doesn't seem to be a precision munition. So are they angering the other countries in the Middle East with these attacks? What will the backlash likely be?
Well, I think all the other nations in the region are furious at them. These are indiscriminate attacks, and that's something Jonathan Conricus, where we talked to yesterday, he said that the U.S. is with precision hitting military targets inside Iran. Israel, as he called it, Iran is a madman, is just lashing out indiscriminately. And we're seeing that in many of the Arab nations and hitting, Bahrain, UAE, many of the hotels. The 7-star hotel in Bahrain has been hit. So there's a serious backlash, Gordon, by these Arab nations. There's been a joint condemnation, and they're actually coming along with the U.S. Iran presumably thought they could pressure the U.S. by hitting these allies, a major miscalculation, and they have been sending literally hundreds of these UAEs, the drones, against their neighbors. And to a good point to be made is that many of these nations don't have the kind of anti-missile structure that Israel does. So many of these projectiles are getting through. For example, they've hit the Saudi Aramco, major oil facility in Saudi Arabia, and many other places in the region.
Well, Secretary Pete Hegseth says that the U.S. is hoping the Iranian people will take advantage of this opportunity. President Trump has called for them to rise up. Do they have the capability to go against the Revolutionary Guard? It seems to be that they're definitely outgunned. Can they really take on this regime?
It seems like right now many of the targets by Israel and the U.S. are against this apparatus that has been set up by the regime, including the IRGC, the Bajis, these shock troops that go out and come against these protests. It seems to be a balance and a tipping point. Some people are saying, are we getting to the point where this apparatus is being decimated and the people can go out in the streets and rise up? And we'll see if that tipping point is going to be reached. We do know that now that many of the people in Iran are just celebrating what's going on right now. I was watching video earlier today. They're calling for the champion, which is Bibi Netanyahu. And we will see if the church and the people of Iran can get to that tipping point. And perhaps as well, in the meantime, Gordon, there could be that immunity that's been extended by President Trump, and some of these IRGC troops and other security forces will begin to turn themselves in and perhaps turn against the regime and for the people.
What's the biblical significance? You go back and look at biblical history, the decree from Cyrus, the reestablishment of the Jews back in Israel after being taken slaves, enslavement by Babylon. Are we seeing a new alliance come of frankly, biblical proportions between Iran and Israel?
I think we could, and this may be that tipping point where many of these nations that actually had almost just a few weeks ago were trying to ally with Iran, and this might be the tipping point where they come and align themselves with Israel. And the other biblical reference, Gordon, is tonight here in Israel, and Jews around the world are going to be celebrating Purim, where about 2,500 years ago, recorded in the book of Esther, where a beautiful Jewish queen helped thwart the plans of Haman, who plotted to annihilate the Jewish people, just like Ayatollah Khamenei. Many are hoping and praying that the same deliverance that freed the people of Persia then will protect the people of Iran and protect the Jewish people. So from a modern-day Haman, who was that wicked ruler that wanted to destroy the Jewish people, that it will be turned on its head, and there could be deliverance for the people of Iran and the freedom from that evil decree to desecrate and destroy the Jewish people.
Now we're going to flip the Cyrus decree, and now it's going to be the Trump-Netanyahu decree to set the captives free in Persia and bring back the Persian people. Well, Chris, thanks for your insights, and please stay safe. I know it's a very tense time in Jerusalem.